What becomes of the circle when the child who should answer its call grows instead at another hearth?
Two households once shared the same birthing shelter during a hard winter when the snow pressed close against the walls.
The infants were placed in the wrong cradles before the first light returned, and each was carried home by hands that did not know the difference.
One boy grew tall among brown-haired kin, while the other remained the only fair one beside the darker heads.
The fields they later worked began to show the strain, for the hands that should have known the old ways of turning the soil moved instead across ground that had never taught them its rhythms.
At the riverbank, the wrong son drew water for a household whose elders had always measured the flow by the sound of their own bloodline.
The buckets came back half full on days when the true keeper would have filled them without thought.
Seasons passed and the pastures grew uneven. One side grazed too close while the other stood untouched, because the youth who walked there did not hear the same warnings in the wind.
Tools left at the edge of the wood stayed longer than they should, their edges dulling while the proper tasks waited.
Elders at the council circle noticed the silence that fell when certain names were spoken.
A question rose and lingered. Whose labor will keep the boundary stones clear when the next winter comes? The answer did not arrive.
Instead, the young men met their blood kin across the fire and found the stories they carried did not match the faces before them.
One household storehouse began to empty earlier each year, while the other watched its own knowledge slip away unspoken.
The land itself began to answer the imbalance.
Paths once kept open by steady feet grew narrow where the wrong steward walked.
Children born later heard fewer songs of the old plantings and more questions about why the basket stood lighter at dusk.
The unfinished thread ran through every turning, a mark upon the stone that no longer guided the right hands, a fire that warmed the wrong circle, a trust between households that thinned like thread pulled too far.
If given the chance, why not develop something monumental?
The elders will sit with stories no longer claimed by the young.
The tools will rest unused, while the next generation learns only half the work that once bound the circle.
Lineage will weaken not from any single break, but from the slow drift of hands that never learned the ground they were meant to hold.
When the words of the elders stir recognition in your heart, let that ember be carried from hearth to hearth, so the flame may strengthen the circle once more.
The paths between the stones grow firm when each voice adds its thread to the rope that binds the kin, and the watch at the boundary stones holds against the wind that would scatter what the elders have kept.
By tending the fire that warms the right hands and guiding the child back to the ground meant for their labor, the lesson passes onward through generations and the circle remains whole.